This is the first of 3 parts. Part 2 will be live same time tomorrow. Stay tuned. The nurse looked at my blood sample and went completely still. Not the stillness of someone who is concentrating. The stillness of someone who has seen something they did not expect to see, and whose body has absorbed the surprise before their training has had time to manage it. A full stop. 3 seconds, maybe 4, of a professional who is no longer moving. Then she looked at it again. I was in the reclining chair in the curtained collection room, watching her from across the small space the way you watch a technician when you are the person whose sample is in their hand, which is the watching of someone who wants information and understands that the technician is the information source, and that pushing for the information before the technician is ready to provide it will not produce the information faster. She looked at the sample a 3rd time. Then she set it down. She looked at me with the professional warmth that good medical staff develop, the warmth that says everything is fine, even when what she has just looked at 3 times is indicating that something is not standard. She said, "Sir, I'm going to step away for just a moment. I'll be right back." She left the room with my sample. The curtain fell behind her, and I was alone in the reclining chair, with the sound of the blood center going about its Tuesday morning business, beyond the thin fabric. And I thought about $218, which was the electric bill that had brought me here, and I thought about the word Donna had used 3 weeks before when she thought I couldn't hear her, and I thought about my wife Carol, who would have known exactly what was happening before the nurse even left the room. 12 minutes later, the curtain opened again. The nurse came back in with a man I had not seen before. "My name is Raymond Tillman. I am 66 years old. I live on Overbrook Avenue in Dayton, Ohio. And the story I am about to tell you begins with a number and ends with a sentence that reorganized everything I understood about what I was carrying inside me. The number is $218. The sentence is the one the man in the suit said when he sat down across from me in that curtained room. You need to hear what happened between those 2 things. Welcome to True Story, Part 1 of 3. Hit that subscribe button and drop your city in the comments. We read every single one. Before we start, skip ahead if you just want the story. Completely up to you. But if any part of this resonates with what's happening in your own family, Ironclad is the system I wish every person in this situation had. 75 pages, 3 fillable templates, built to protect your legacy before someone underestimates it. Half off today at $8.99. Link and QR code on screen. Skip if you want. Otherwise, let's get into it. The electric bill arrived on a Tuesday in October. Pale yellow notice from Dayton Power and Light, the kind that has moved past routine into the territory where the language gets specific about timelines. The amount due was $218. In most periods of my life, this would have been a Tuesday afternoon's task. You write the check or you click the button, and the bill is handled, and you move on to whatever comes next. That is how $218 works, when it exists inside a financial life with sufficient room around it. My financial life in October of that year did not have sufficient room around it. I had sold my business 14 months before. I had sold it for a fair price, under circumstances I will describe. The price should have been comfortable. It was not comfortable because of what had happened in the 26 months between the sale and the October with the yellow notice, and I will describe that too. What I will tell you now is that I sat at the kitchen table on Overbrook Avenue with the notice and my coffee, and I did the arithmetic twice, carefully, and the arithmetic said that $218 required a decision. I thought about what was available. Then I called my neighbor Gene Paulson and asked if he would drive me to Woodman Drive in the morning. Gene was 69, retired, had lived next door for 18 years, and had the specific quality that 18 years of proximity to the right neighbor produces, which is that he appeared when he was needed, without requiring an explanation of why he was needed. He said what time, and I said 9:15, and he said he'd be in the driveway. He did not ask where we were going. I did not say. I put the notice in the small basket on the counter, where Carol used to put things that needed to be handled. The basket was still there because I had not found a reason to move it, and the putting of things in it still felt correct, the way that the small continuations of a dead person's habits feel correct, which is completely and without requiring justification. I lay in the dark and I thought about Donna's word. The word she had used 3 weeks before at Sunday dinner in Centerville, when the conversation had moved into the kitchen, and she had not known I was within earshot. The word was worthless. She had said it with the specific flat certainty of a conclusion that had already been reached. Not said in the heat of an argument, not said in frustration. Said the way a person states a fact they have verified and no longer feel the need to qualify. I lay in the dark on Overbrook Avenue, and I thought about that word, and about what it described, and about what it did not describe, and eventually I slept. I need to tell you who I am before I tell you what happened in that blood center, not because I need you to think well of me, because the word Donna used requires a full picture to be understood correctly, and the full picture starts in 1973, when I was 22 years old and got my first job in a transmission shop on Salem Avenue in Dayton. I had grown up in West Dayton, the third of 4 children in a house on Gettysburg Avenue, where the floor plan was specific and the resources were not abundant, and where what was expected of children was that they would find what they were good at and apply themselves to it without requiring a great deal of guidance from parents who were already managing more than most people manage. My father worked at the Frigidaire plant. My mother cleaned houses 3 days a week and was home the other 4. They were not distant people, they were busy people, which is a distinction that matters and that I did not fully understand until I was a parent myself. What I was good at was listening to machines. I understood this before I understood most things about myself. The neighbor on Emerson Avenue who let a 15-year-old work on his '68 Chevelle taught me the vocabulary for what I already had, which was the ability to hear what a system was telling you through the sounds it made, and the way it responded, and the patterns of its behavior under different conditions. A failing system communicates its failure. The competence is in learning the language. I got my license in 1979. I worked for 3 shops over 15 years, learning from each of them what that shop knew, and moving on when I had learned it. In 1994, I came to work for Phil Hargrove's 3-bay operation on Linden Avenue in Dayton's Dayton View neighborhood, which is where I understood for the first time that I had found both the right shop and the right future. Phil was 61 when I started working for him. He had been running the operation since 1974 and had built it on a single principle, which was that a customer who was told the truth about their vehicle's condition became a customer who returned. Not because honesty is a philosophy, because over a long enough timeline, honesty is the profitable approach. Phil had a long timeline. I worked for Phil for 7 years. In year 3, he started teaching me the business side, because he had recognized something about how I thought that told him I was a potential owner rather than just a skilled employee. By year 7, I could run every aspect of the operation, and Phil was ready to retire, and the first opportunity was mine. I bought Hargrove's Auto Service in March of 2001. I renamed it Tillman's Auto Service in 2003, when enough time had passed that the name accurately described what we were. By 2010, we had 6 bays and 8 employees, and 3 commercial fleet accounts with local businesses that provided the consistent volume that turns a good shop into a stable shop. By 2019, we were grossing consistently, carrying no debt, and maintaining the reputation that the previous 18 years of correctly diagnosed problems had built. Carol ran the operation behind the operation. I need to say this clearly because it is true, and because the failure to say it clearly when she was alive to receive the saying is one of the things I carry. She ran the scheduling, she managed the accounts payable, and the supplier relationships, and the fleet account billing cycles, and the payroll. She handled the customer communication system that I had never organized correctly before she organized it, working from the kitchen table on Overbrook Avenue on a part-time basis, while also holding her position as a teacher's aide at Horace Mann Elementary for 24 years. She did all of this without announcing that she was doing it. She simply did it the way she did most things, which was completely and without requiring the people around her to understand the full scope of what she was managing at any given moment. It was only after she was gone that the full scope became visible to me, which is a specific and irreversible kind of education. Carol Elizabeth Tillman died in November of 2020. Breast cancer, diagnosed in March of that year, gone by November. The compressed cruelty of that timeline that leaves you not enough room to accept what is coming, and not enough time to say what needs saying. She was 63 years old. She had been entirely herself on a Thursday, and she was gone by November, and the house on Overbrook Avenue, which had been ours for 23 years, became mine, in the way that a house becomes yours when it stops being shared, which is completely and wrong. The last clear evening we had, the last Thursday when she was fully present, and the conversation could go anywhere, she looked at me from the bed in the upstairs room, where the evening light came in from the west window, and she said, "Raymond, you have always been more than you think you are. That has been the pattern of your whole life, and I have watched it for 39 years. Don't let it continue after I'm gone." I said I would try. I have thought about whether I was keeping that promise every day since November 2020. I sold Tillman's Auto Service in September of 2021, 18 months after Carol died. The buyer was a regional automotive group that had been approaching me intermittently since 2018. I had declined each approach while the shop was ours, because the shop was not for sale while it was ours. When it became mine alone, the calculation shifted. Running a 6-bay shop without the person who ran the operation behind the operation is a specific kind of difficulty that I want to describe precisely, because the precision matters. It is not the work itself that becomes impossible. The work I could do. I had done it for 41 years, and the ability to diagnose an engine, or manage a complex repair, does not leave a person because they are grieving. What leaves them is the structure that made the work sustainable. The scheduling and the accounts and the supplier calls and the fleet account relationships. The invisible architecture that Carol had maintained from the kitchen table on Overbrook Avenue for 18 years. Without that architecture, the shop was a skilled mechanic operating without a system, which is to say, it was operating on declining efficiency and declining reliability and producing the kind of customer experience that a 20-year reputation cannot absorb indefinitely. I sold in September of 2021 for a fair price. The price was fair because Phil Hargrove had sold to me at a fair price, and I understood what that had meant to me, and I extended the same standard. I walked out of the closing with enough to be comfortable, and with the specific exhaustion of a man who has finished something significant and does not yet know what the next significant thing will be. The next significant thing turned out to be the thing that ate the comfortable. My son Paul was 42. He and his wife Donna and their 2 children lived in Centerville. Paul worked in financial services sales and had the smooth effectiveness of a person for whom social competence is a professional tool, which he had developed into something genuinely impressive and which he deployed in all environments including the family ones, which is the part that requires attention. The pattern with Paul had started before Carol died. It had started in his late 20s with a $4,000 loan that had been repaid partially and then not at all. It had continued through his early 30s in various forms, each one shaped the same way. A temporary situation requiring a specific amount, a repayment schedule that ran for a few months and then ran out of momentum. Carol had tracked every amount in the family finance notebook she kept, dated and specific, without making the tracking the center of the relationship. After she died, I found the notebook. The page dedicated to Paul ran to $31,200. Outstanding, not repaid. Written in Carol's handwriting, in the slightly looser hand of the months when the medication was affecting her fine motor control. I did not confront Paul about the $31,200. I made the calculation Carol had apparently made, which was that the relationship was worth more than the accounting, and I set the notebook in the drawer, and I continued being his father in the ways that being his father required. What I did not calculate accurately was what the unchallenged accounting looked like from Paul's side. What it looked like from his side was that the accounting was not real. That what had been described as loans were actually gifts that had been given the language of loans because that language was less uncomfortable for everyone involved. That his father had infinite patience for the arrangement, and the arrangement would continue indefinitely. He was not wrong about my patience. He was wrong about what the patience meant, and how long it would last. The Sunday dinners at Paul and Donna's house in Centerville began in spring of 2021 and were Donna's suggestion. I received the suggestion as the gesture it appeared to be, which was a daughter-in-law including her father-in-law during a difficult period. I received it that way for 6 months. By the end of the first year, I had begun to see the structure beneath the gesture. The dinners were organized the way Donna organized things, which was efficiently and toward a purpose. The purpose was not connection. The purpose was access. Each dinner had a progression: warmth at the start, the grandchildren and the food, and the easy conversation about the week. A middle section of practical topics that kept me adjacent to the family's circumstances without being directly asked about anything yet. And then a late movement, after the dishes, when Paul raised what he had been moving toward all along. I had helped with a home improvement situation in 2022, a car repair in early 2023, 3 smaller amounts in between, each described as temporary, none of which had returned. And in August of 2023, 6 weeks before the October with the yellow notice, I had given Paul $1,100 for a bill he called urgent, which it was, in the way that his urgent situations were always urgent, which is that they were real situations made urgent by the accumulation of decisions that had preceded them. 3 weeks after the $1,100, in September, at the Sunday dinner in Centerville, where Paul had been building through the evening towards something larger, I arrived to find him in the kitchen with the grandchildren, while Donna finished preparing the food. She let me in, and we exchanged the brief warmth of a greeting, and then she went back to the kitchen, and I sat in the living room. Through the kitchen doorway, her voice carried. She was talking to Paul, in the low register of a conversation not intended for outside ears. I could not catch every word. What I could catch was the end of what she was saying, the sentence she had been building toward, the one that arrived with the specific flat certainty of a conclusion that had already been reached and was being confirmed rather than argued. She said, "Honestly, Paul, what is your father going to do for us at this point? The man barely keeps his lights on. Asking him is pointless. He is worthless to us now." I sat in the living room. I did not move. I did not change my breathing. I sat with the particular stillness of a man who has been doing physical work his whole life and has learned that the first response to something unexpected is not a response at all, but an assessment. I looked at the photographs on the wall. One of them was Carol at a birthday party in 2018, in the garden at Overbrook Avenue, wearing the yellow shirt she had bought in Yellow Springs that summer. She was laughing at something just outside the frame of the photograph. She looked entirely like herself, which is what good photographs of people who are gone do. They hold the person precisely as they were, rather than as the grief of losing them has made them in memory. I looked at Carol in the yellow shirt. I thought about the word worthless. I thought about what the word means when it is applied to a thing versus when it is applied to a person. When it is applied to a thing, a part that has failed, a tool that can no longer function, the word is accurate and carries no additional weight. When it is applied to a person, it is different, because a person is not a component of a system you are maintaining. A person is the system. Donna had assessed one visible element: the 66-year-old widower with the Social Security check and the recipe notebook project, and apparently the electric bill situation. She had built her conclusion from what was visible and had not asked about what was not visible, which is the specific error that someone with no training in diagnosis makes. You do not conclude from one visible element without checking for the ones you cannot see. You do not call a system worthless without running the full diagnostic. She had not run the full diagnostic. She had not asked a single question about my life before her marriage to Paul. Not about the shop. Not about the 41 years. Not about Carol and what the two of us had built across 39 years of marriage on Overbrook Avenue and inside the 6 bays on Linden Avenue. Not about what I carried, which is to say, not about what I actually was. She had assessed the outside and concluded from it. I had spent 41 years diagnosing systems by listening to what they were saying beneath the visible symptom. 41 years of understanding that what a thing looks like from the outside is rarely the full story. The full story is in the data you gather carefully, not the conclusion you draw from the first thing you see. Paul came out of the kitchen and called me to dinner, and I went and sat down and ate the food Donna had prepared, which was good, and talked to the grandchildren, who were 8 and 5, and had the specific completeness of children who are fully in whatever moment they are in, and I watched Paul build through the dinner toward the ask. When it came, after the dishes, 8 or 9,000 for a business opportunity he described with the specific confidence of a person who believes in what they are presenting and needs the room to believe it too, I sat with the ask for a moment. I sat with it, and with what I had heard through the kitchen doorway, and with Donna across the table, in the expression of a woman who had already concluded what my answer was going to be, and was waiting for the conclusion to be confirmed. I told him I would think about it. He said he appreciated it. Donna said something warm about how nice it was to have this time together. I said the food had been good, which it had been. I drove home to Overbrook Avenue. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened Carol's recipe notebook to page 47, where I had been stuck for 3 weeks. I read the recipe on 47, which was her version of chicken paprikash, which she had made every October, because October was the right month for it, and Carol had precise opinions about when things were right. Her note at the bottom of the page said, "Use the full amount of paprika that looks like too much. It is not too much." I had always used less than it looked like too much. I had always been wrong about the paprika. I did not call that week. I did not call the week after. The yellow notice arrived on a Tuesday in the 3rd week, and I sat at the table and did the arithmetic twice, and called Jean Paulson. The Community Blood Center on Woodman Drive was doing its Tuesday morning business when Jean dropped me at the entrance at 9:22. The waiting room had mustard-colored chairs and the specific quality of a space where important things happen routinely, which gives it a stillness that other waiting rooms do not have. I checked in, filled out the intake forms, sat in a mustard chair. They called my name at 10:09. A nurse named Rebecca took me to the collection room and ran through the pre-donation protocol with the warmth and efficiency of someone who has done this hundreds of times and still applies the same care to each instance. She drew the sample. She had the needle and the equipment and the procedure running, with the practiced ease of her training, and then the sample was collected, and she removed it from the apparatus. She looked at it. I watched her look at it. I watched the look go from a glance to an examination. I watched the look go from a glance to an examination. I watched the look go from a glance to an examination. I watched the look go from a glance to an examination. I watched the look go from a glance to an examination. The way you tilt something when you want to see it from a different angle to make sure you are seeing it correctly. She looked at it a 3rd time. Then she set it carefully on the equipment tray, and she turned to me with the professional warmth that said everything is proceeding normally, which was the exact same warmth she had been using since I sat down, and which now had underneath it something different, and she said, "Sir, I'll be right back." Just one moment. She left the room. I lay in the reclining chair and listened to the blood center going about its Tuesday morning beyond the curtain. Other voices. The sound of equipment. Someone at the check-in desk saying something and laughing. The ordinary sounds of a place doing its work, indifferent to what might be sitting in my blood sample in a laboratory somewhere in this building. I thought about Carol. About the last Thursday evening when she had been fully herself and had said, "Don't let it continue after I'm gone." About whether the sitting in this chair was the beginning of not letting it continue, or a deeper form of exactly what she had been telling me to stop. I thought about the Chevelle on Emerson Avenue in 1973. About the first time I had listened to that engine and heard what it was telling me about itself, and understood that what I could hear was not what everyone could hear, that I carried something other people did not carry. I had been 15 years old, and I had not known what to do with the understanding yet, but I had known it was real. I thought about Donna saying worthless, with the flat certainty of someone who had already moved past the assessment to the implications of the assessment. I thought about $218. 12 minutes after she left, the curtain opened. Rebecca came back in. Behind her was a man in a white coat I had not seen before, 50 or so, heavy-framed glasses, the unhurried manner of a physician who has passed through the years of his career when urgency was performed and arrived at the years when urgency is reserved for situations that actually require it, which sharpens the signal considerably when you do see it. He said, "Mr. Tillman, I'm Dr. Simmons. I'm the medical director here. I'd like to ask you a few questions if you have a few minutes." I said I did. He asked when I had last donated. I said 15 years ago, at a workplace drive. He asked if I had ever been told anything particular about my blood type. I said I had been told I was O negative sometime in my 20s and had not had reason to think further about it. He wrote something on his clipboard. Then he said, "Mr. Tillman, your initial sample has come back with a result I want to look at more carefully before I tell you anything specific. I'd like to run a confirmation test, which typically takes about 20 minutes here at our facility. I'd like to ask you to stay in this room while we do that. Rebecca will stay with you. Is that all right?" I said that was fine. He left. Rebecca pulled a chair to the side of my reclining chair. She offered water. I said yes, and she brought a small cup, and I drank it, and she sat with the particular professional stillness of someone who has been asked to be present without being asked to explain. 20 minutes in a curtained room is different from 20 minutes in an open one. In an open space, 20 minutes moves through you and continues past you, and you move with it. In a curtained room, with a sample of your blood, doing something in a laboratory that has caused a trained medical professional to leave without explaining what she saw, 20 minutes pools. I thought about Carol saying, "You have always been more than you think you are." I thought about Phil Hargrove handing me the keys to the shop on Linden Avenue in March of 2001 and saying, "The first opportunity is yours, Raymond, because you've earned the first opportunity." I thought about 34 years of listening to machines tell me what was wrong with them, the specific ability, the thing the neighbor's Chevelle had taught me at 15, the thing I had built 41 years of professional life on top of, the thing that nobody in Donna's assessment of my current circumstances had included in the assessment because Donna had not asked about it and I had not offered it. The system is always speaking. The competence is in learning the language. 17 minutes after Dr. Simmons left, the curtain opened. He came back in. He had a different folder than the one he had been carrying before. He sat in the chair Rebecca had been in, and he set the folder on his knee, and he looked at me with an expression that was not alarm, and was not excitement, and was something more specific than either, which was the expression of a medical professional who is in possession of unusual information and is deciding how to frame its delivery. He said, "Mr. Tillman, the confirmation test has come back. Before I explain what it shows, I want to ask your permission to make a phone call." I looked at him. He said, "There is an organization I work with in situations that present like this one. Their representative would be able to explain the full picture, much more specifically than I am positioned to at this point. The representative can be here within 30 minutes of my call. I would like to make that call with your permission." I said, "Dr. Simmons, what is the test showing?" He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "Mr. Tillman, what I can tell you right now is that what we are looking at in your blood is something that occurs in approximately 1 person in 6 million people on Earth. I want the representative here before I say more than that, because what comes next is a conversation that deserves to be had correctly. May I make the call? 1 person in 6 million. The curtained collection room was absolutely still. Through the curtain, the blood center continued its Tuesday morning, unaware of what had just been said in this particular curtained space, indifferent to the specific words 1 person in 6 million that were sitting in the air of this room, between a medical director and a 66-year-old man who had come here to solve a $218 problem. I thought about Donna's word, 1 person in 6 million. I said, "Make the call." Dr. Simmons stood. He stepped through the curtain. Through the thin fabric I could hear his voice, low and brief. The identifying himself and the address and the "this is a confirmed case" and the yes and the thank you. 45 seconds. Then the curtain opened and he came back in. He said, "The representative will be here in approximately 30 minutes. His name is Dr. Mercer. He will explain everything in full. I am going to step out to handle some matters, but Rebecca will be here, and I will return before Dr. Mercer arrives." He left. Rebecca sat back down. She brought more water without being asked. I drank it and set the cup on the tray and looked at the ceiling of the collection room. 20 minutes in a curtained room after a doctor has told you that what is in your blood occurs in one person in 6 million is a very specific 20 minutes. I have spent long periods of time waiting for information in my professional life, waiting for a part to arrive that will confirm or refute a diagnosis, waiting for a customer to make a decision, waiting for a deal to close or a bid to come back. In all of those waits, there is the thing you know, and the thing you are waiting to find out, and the space between those two things that the waiting occupies. This waiting was different. In this waiting, I did not know what I knew. I knew a number, 1 in 6 million, and I knew that a doctor had called a different professional to come explain it to me, rather than explaining it himself, and I knew that a nurse had looked at my sample 3 times before setting it down, and I knew none of those things added up to anything I could name yet. I thought about Carol saying, "You have always been more than you think you are." I thought about what that sentence meant, and what it had meant across the years I had heard it, which were many years because she had said versions of it more than once, in the specific patient way of a woman who is repeating something true enough that it needs repeating because the person it is being said to has not yet fully received it. I thought about the Chevelle at 15, about the specific feeling of listening to a system that other people were not hearing, about understanding at 15 that what I could hear was not what everyone could hear, and not knowing yet what to do with the understanding, but knowing it was real and that it mattered. I thought about 41 years of automotive work, about the thousands of systems I had listened to and the thousands of problems I had found by paying attention to what the system was telling me, about the quality Phil Hargrove had identified in year 3 and named correctly, which was not mechanical skill but diagnostic precision, the ability to hear the signal in the noise. I had been carrying that for 41 years. Donna had not asked about it. She had looked at the outside and concluded from the outside, and her conclusion was the conclusion that a person reaches when they only check the visible symptoms. The ceiling of the collection room was acoustic tile, regular and unremarkable. I had been looking at it for approximately 17 minutes when the curtain opened again. The man who came through it was not in a white coat. He was in a dark suit, perhaps 45 years old. The presentation of someone who moves between medical environments and corporate ones and has calibrated himself precisely for each. He had a folder under his arm and the unhurried quality of a man who is never truly in a hurry because he has learned that what matters cannot be rushed, and that rushing what does not matter is a waste of energy that the matters require. He sat down across from me. He opened the folder. He reviewed the top page for a moment in the specific silence of someone who already knows what it says and is giving himself one more look before the conversation begins. Then he looked up. He had the direct, steady attention of a person who has learned that the most respectful thing you can do for someone you are about to deliver significant information to is to look at them fully while you are delivering it. He said, "Mr. Tillman, my name is Dr. Alan Mercer. I appreciate your patience this morning. Before I explain anything, I want to ask you one question." He leaned forward slightly. He said, "Sir, are you aware of what your blood type is worth?" The curtained collection room held that question the way a still room holds a sound, fully and without dissipating it. Outside the curtain, the blood center continued its work. Inside the curtain, the question sat in the air between Dr. Alan Mercer and a 66-year-old man from Dayton, Ohio, who had driven to Woodman Drive to solve a $218 problem and who had heard, 3 weeks before, the word worthless applied to him by a woman who had not asked a single question about his life before assessing its value. Part 1 ends here. Part 2 is already up, linked in the description below. In Part 2, you will hear exactly what Dr. Mercer said next, what the blood type is and what it means, and what the following 3 weeks produced for a man the woman in Centerville had already written off. Come back for Part 2. Drop a comment and tell me which moment in this first part hit you the hardest. Hit the like button, subscribe if you are not already here. One last thing before you go, and skip this entirely if you want. But if this story made you think about who has underestimated what you carry, Ironclad is built for that. The system for protecting what you have built before someone decides it doesn't matter. $8.99 today, half off. Link and QR code on screen right now. Come back for part 2. True Story uploads every week. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. Part 2 airs tomorrow same time. Stay tuned.